From the very start of the year in Miss Davis's English 11 class, the theme of man versus society has rung true throughout many of the works we studied. This struggle is also constantly endured by immigrants, especially undocumented Mexican immigrants. For this video, since it is focused around struggles with society, the visuals will be various vintage commercials which often attempt to dictate what makes a person acceptable in modern society. Consider the situation that Huck and Jim are constantly finding themselves in throughout Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn is constantly fighting against the concept of being civilized. He fears that civilization is a loss of freedom and instead decides to remain an outcast. Civilization, in the setting of the book, means being God-fearing, well-behaved, and generally servile in the case of Huck, who is a child. As Huck questions religion, people, and the purpose of slavery, he's actively refusing to assimilate into the person that society dictates him to be. Society, instead of listening to Huck's marginalized voice, blindly judges Huck for having interests that do not align with society, even when he has reasoning for his action. Huck provides a contrast to this injustice by actually listening to Jim and what he has to say, despite Jim himself having a marginalized voice due to his designation as a lowly black slave. Huck does not blindly follow society and actually treats Jim like an equal in many instances, deciding against turning Jim in when provided the opportunity, even though this went against societal expectation. The issue of learning provides the most relevant connection to the articles we covered when researching immigrants. While Widow Douglas and Judge Thatcher may dictate that you must study the Bible and go to school, Huck's father, in his loathing of school, beats and punishes Huck for trying to become more educated. Huck is an outcast at school, but soon comes to enjoy learning, yet is still judged by others who do not understand his circumstances. Many of the Mexican immigrants today are also in situations where school has to take second priority to family, yet many despise these immigrants for dropping out of school without considering possible reasoning for these immigrants' absence. According to the video Immigrant High, statistics around Latino immigrant students are disgraceful, but as stated in Undocumented Students, dropping out is usually a responsible decision since working seems more sensible than staying in school when trying to support one's family. Undocumenteds don't even have the promise of getting into college. One should also consider The Awakening by Kate Chopin, where Edna Pontellier is an outcast in the setting of Creole society, and F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, where Jay Gatsby does not seem to fit in with the wealthy people of society, instead normally choosing solitude as his magnificent parties occur. While for the sake of brevity in this video I can't go into depth about the specific issues of Edna and Gatsby and fitting in with society, perhaps the most important aspect of their struggle is that they are judged by society for not meeting certain standards, yet given little assistance or advice on how to go about fitting into society. Gatsby tries by throwing huge parties, but he never truly fits in the end no one even comes to his funeral. Edna ends up committing suicide as she could not find a comfortable fit in Creole culture. This is the struggle of Mexican immigrants. In the case of undocumented immigrants, they are judged for not going to college or even graduating high school, and yet are refused admission to college. Attempts to combat this are consistently quenched. The DREAM Act, which would have allowed undocumented students to apply to certain colleges, was rejected in the Senate. Many racist people blindly judge immigrants for stealing American jobs without taking the time to truly understand the situation these Mexican people are in. Janie had difficulty fitting into and being accepted by society, and Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. But I think you already have that down pretty well. Overall, the issues faced by the major protagonists of all the stories we have read this year are not unique to them. Many people, of different races and genders, are rejected by society as they try to obtain the American dream. As one Mexican immigrant stated in Immigrant High, their life is here and they support the country. Shouldn't that make them an American? Immigrant High goes on to state what the true outlook should be. Regardless of immigration status or ethnicity, we are a country that has always had pride of all the different cultures that are here. For the country to be a global competitive force, we have the most amazing resources and assets in the young people, young immigrants specifically, here and now. Societal expectations do not need to be so high, and everyone can work harder to be more accepting. The last thing we want is for someone to commit suicide, get shot by a pool, or crash their car, just because they are judged by society for one thing or another.